I would say the best thing that you can do is to learn to be autonomous. You're not dependent on like somebody else's schedule or their skill set or how much money you made on your bonus check of your day job. That's where you're going to make all your money.
The creative world is filled with creative people dreaming of being discovered by millions of adoring fans and supporting their lives with their creativity. Most of these creative people find that achieving those dreams is a lot harder than they thought. But some of them take a different path, and instead of hoping to be discovered, they take matters into their own hands. I'm not just one of the boys. I come to take that choice. But don't be fooled, this girl's not another brother. Katrina Stone is one of the top performing musicians on artlist.io. Her music has been featured in commercials and advertising campaigns for clients including Apple, Pez, and Hulu. Her tracks have been placed in television, film, and countless pieces of online content all around the world. She's a full-time artist and producer, and she doesn't sit around waiting for phone calls from record labels. She is the record label, and her label makes money by releasing music. Lots and lots of music. The path to supporting ourselves in our creativity is a winding one. Here's how Katrina's done it, and here's how we can all step up and take the road less traveled in our own creative lives. Welcome to the Story Greenlight podcast, where we're all about empowering creators like you to tell your stories, connect with your audience, and create the impact that you were put on this planet to make. My name is Jeff Barch. I'm a coach, author, and entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience shaping content for ABC, NBC, Universal, Disney, Apple, and a whole bunch of others. My team and I support creators with followings in the hundreds to the many millions. At Story Greenlight, we believe that you matter, your message matters, and the world needs to hear what you have to say. It has been a minute, Katrina.
Yes,
so
it has.
last time we hung out, I think we were actually at the studio with you and Benj.
Yep.
Doing music
Recording some music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There and when was that? That was that the end of 2020 or halfway
fall
into
2020? Yeah. That was the end of fall, or the end of 2020, right before Christmas, I think.
Oh, well, because that was right before we left LA. Before my family and I left LA. Now, when did you guys head out from LA?
We headed out the day after Christmas in 2020. So we got through Christmas and hit the road.
Man, oh man. Okay, so it's just so surreal how the world has changed, and I've been telling multiple people the stories about how high-end broadcast work in Los Angeles, and everyone was always saying it cannot be done remotely. It will never happen. It cannot be done, and it's all happening right now. But I mean, in your case, I mean, you've been dealing with crazy seismic changes as a musician for years now. So for people who haven't met you yet, how did you start in music, and how did you get from the point? I mean, there are so many people who want to be a musician, and they think they want to be a rock star or they want to be a front person, and yet you've ended up into a place where you've actively taken control of your music.
Yes.
So how did you start out, and how did you get, and where are you now?
Well, I started out like most singers, somewhere in high school, saying, I want to sign a record deal, mostly because I didn't understand the music industry. I wanted somebody else to handle everything. I went to school for music for about a semester, and I hated it. I ended up graduating in sociology because that was the major where I could just get through it without buying any books. And I did. So I graduated in 3 years, and then I got married right away and kind of assumed that my music career was over. It was like, okay, I got to be a wife and maybe one day a mother, and this is sort of a crazy dream that like grown-ups don't have this dream to do music. They teach or they, and props to people who do those careers. I couldn't do it. So I told my soon-to-be husband that at one point, well, I'm going to have to give up music. Maybe I'll sing at church. And he was like, I'm marrying a musician. I know what I'm getting into. And I was like, oh, okay. So shortly after our honeymoon, I did some competitions, gospel music competitions, did pretty well. I was locked into a record deal that I couldn't do anything with after that. And that really opened my eyes to the record label industry. And I was like, I'm going to start cutting records on my own as soon as this label lets me go. And I started cutting some pretty terrible records. They were pretty bad at first. I'm going to just throw that out there. They were not good, but I had to do them. I had to figure this out. And I was using other producers here and there, just like, hey, can you make a track for me? Can you record me playing piano? And it really wasn't until my main producer guy moved away that I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to do this for myself if I want to keep doing this, even just as a hobby. I'm not making any money at it yet, but I need to figure out how to produce myself. So then I kind of dove into the world of Pro Tools and mixing and making MIDI tracks, and they weren't great. Again, there's a learning curve there, especially for me, because I'm not technically minded. Like it's not my go-to to be like, let's take this apart and put it back together. It's like, nope, take it to a professional, Yeah. So then I had cut kind of an indie pop record a la Ingrid Michaelson, and had entered it into a competition for a clothing company called Maurice's, and they were doing a competition called Hometown Sound. And I won, and part of the prize package was that they would fly me to Los Angeles, because I was in Colorado at the time, to do a music video shoot. So they flew me out there and we shot a video, and I had a friend out there, Bench. You've met Bench. Okay. And he's like, why don't you stay in town for a few extra days and let's do some co-writing sessions. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what this is, and it stresses me out, co-writing, And I realized really quick, like, people are making a living writing music in Los Angeles. And so then we moved out to Los Angeles after a few months, because my husband was able to get transferred. He was managing a restaurant at that point. And it was like, hey, we might as well do this while our daughter was young. She was a year old. And I was like, hey, let's do it while she's young. She won't remember any of this. It'll be great. And then from there, I kind of fell into making a ton of music, just a massive catalog, just like creating constantly. It was a kind of a crazy season, but a good season of just like song after song after song. And so, of course, these songs ended up, like in catalogs or getting noticed by people who wanted to sync them to wedding videos or regional commercials, or, it was small at first. And I was like, okay, there is something here.
Okay.
That's the stay-at-home, homeschool mom.
Okay.
So well, that's where that started.
So I want to back up a little bit. You had originally said that you wanted to get the record deal.
Yes.
And that was the big dream. And frankly, probably at the time when you were first thinking that probably was the dream in that time.
Yeah.
But then you got it. And you kind of, and you, just the look on your face, you said, you got it. Yes, I did. So tell us about that.
Well, so I didn't win this huge competition. It was like a Christian American Idol. I think I ended up coming in like third, which was actually really a huge blessing. But all of the top 10, and they were all so good, after one long day of competing and rehearsing, they had us go back to our hotel rooms with this like 100-page contract. And we all signed it. We were all so tired and hungry, and we were just like, we all signed it. And it wasn't until
horrible.
It was so horrible. And I didn't even attempt to read it until I got home. And that was the main problem. I'm 21 years old, and it was, I won't even tell you which label. I don't want any sort of defamation.
No worries.
I took it to a lawyer and was like, can I get out of this? I'd like to use some of this momentum that I've got to make a record for myself. And they did end up like having all of us come back to do this big compilation. I had to sing a few songs live, and they had some great guest stars, and they really took care of us, but it was not worth the 2 years that I had to sit there shelved. 2 years of my career that I couldn't do anything with the momentum I had built up from being on this TV show on DirecTV.
So when you say shelved, so to people who don't know what that means, what actually happened? Because you got a record deal, but what did that actually look like?
They do not have to actually do anything with you, but they don't allow anyone else to do anything with you. And that's what's so frustrating, because this is not some crazy story. This happens all the time. And you can be shelved. You could cut the best record I've seen it happen with one of my friends, best record of your life, incredible players, beautiful songs. And if it competes with somebody else that is also currently on the rise and they've decided to back that person, you will get shelved. Your record, your project, your name, your brand, your contract is just kind of put up on shelf and left there to sit and rot.
Oh, most of the time these deals are, well, all the time, these kind of deals are exclusive. So you can't just go to anyone else.
Yep. And that's what the lawyer said. You're stuck until this is over. It's actually the reason I never even really changed my name, because Katrina Stone is my maiden name. My husband was like, don't change it. It's great. But I didn't want to come across like I was trying to release a record under a different name to get around the deal, because it was a big label and they were scary.
Yeah.
And they can throw their weight around with these young artists, and they totally did. So I waited it out and just wrote and tried to hone my skills in that time. But I learned a very valuable lesson that I need to be in control of my own music and my own time frame, my own money. I needed control over that.
I am not basic, it's self-explanatory. I am a masterpiece, you know I do it for me.
For the creative types in the Story Greenlight audience, for creators who say, I'm going to sign up to Epidemic Sound or Artlist or MusicBed or whoever, and ta-da, I instantly have access to thousands upon thousands of cues. How do those cues get there? And how do people make money off them? And how do the artists make or not make money? So just big picture, like how does it actually work for the artists?
Well, they many of them have switched to the subscription model, where you have like Artlist. I'm on Artlist, and I've actually really enjoyed it because I have a huge catalog. So my songs go out everywhere. Everyone is downloading them. So subscription model, we get paid every time you download it, whether you use it or not in your subscription. And so it's really based on quantity. But where that has really paid off for me as an artist versus the single sync is that I will get hit up all the time for a song that they heard in some wedding video or some commercial in Japan or whatever. And I will do another, like a license for somebody that heard it on my own. And it'll be a one-off license. And we've seen huge returns from that. And so just like getting the music out there through this subscription-based model, because I think MusicBed has one now too. I was with them for quite a while. Epidemic is a little bit different. They do tend to buy out the master rights. I still own all my own masters with Artlist for the most part, like the stuff that's up there right now. And so I could take it all down and put it somewhere else, and they don't own any of it. But these subscription-based models is based on quantity. But then once it's out there, there's secondary income that comes in. There's obviously people hear it and they Shazam it and they're listening to it on Spotify, and I make, decent money from Spotify, actually, like no complaints here. I know a lot of artists that are kind of, but it's because I really like get my music out there. It's everywhere, and it's international. Like my ASCAP statements that come in from something that might have been licensed from Artlist for a very, very small amount for that subscription fee, it'll come back in, and it's been playing for a year on a commercial in Japan. And we've got like a 5-figure ASCAP check sitting there. And it's like that $1, whatever I got paid for that license or whatever, it comes back around. And then people are listening to it. And so it's just kind of this snowball effect. But that also, I have a huge catalog. And so that makes a big difference. Like if you have 5 songs, you might want to be more particular about like where you place them, because you only have those 5 songs. But there is like a great career to be had for artists that are with Spotify, with all of these different streaming services and licensing their music and playing shows. Like you can do it. So I don't know. I don't feel as much of the wave of like, oh, the music industry is really suffering right now, because I'm kind of like, well, I'm doing all right because I've really set myself up. I produce a lot of music. I produce good music. And then those once in a while things will come in that's like, can you make, like I just did last year with Benj, all of Dollywood's. Dollywood is a theme park here in Tennessee. It's like a little Disneyland for Southerners. And they wanted me to do all their music because they had heard a song. I think they had maybe licensed a song from Artlist at some point. And they're like, we like your style. Can you do custom ones for each season? And so we kind of crafted, not even with my voice in them, just, because they heard a song somewhere and they liked my vibe like that. And that's how it works. You got to put yourself out there, Yeah.
And so what everyone would say is how incredibly lucky. Well, sure. Was there some luck attached to that? I'm sure there might be some, but good grief, you've been cranking. I mean, you've been putting yourself in the position for that, for that kind of thing to be happening.
Yeah. I'm very prolific.
Well, so here's a question. So how would you, to the people who say that it's so hard for musicians to support themselves with their music these days, what would your response be? And say, hey, here's the directions that I've gone to take control for myself.
I get this a lot, actually, because it seems like my story is unusual and like I just found all the right little paths. But I've seen other people sort of replicate it. And so I know that it's not unusual, but it does take a certain type of person. I would say the best thing that you can do is to learn to be autonomous. You need to be able to record yourself and produce music without funding from an external source, like a record label, without having to take your own money and like hire producers all the time, hire someone to mix, hire someone to master. Like you have to learn to do this stuff to cut your overhead down. And then all of a sudden you're a machine that can basically go, I want to go this way. And now I want to go this way. And you can do all of the things because you are creating content all in-house. Maybe you hire a guitar player once in a while. I do that where I'll just kind of hire the people I don't want to try to figure out how to play those instruments or do those things. But if you can be a sort of autonomous musician where you're not dependent on like somebody else's schedule or their skill set or how much money you made on your bonus check of your day job, that is, if you can get into that, like that's where you're going to make all your money. All of a sudden you're valuable because you can cut a record, 10 songs with instrumentals, and you can put them up somewhere and be like, license my music. And then you can cut another 10 and put them at this other website, and that's what is exciting to me is like, I'm finally starting to see the fruit of like 8 or 9 years worth of just like solid music making. And I mean, even last year I took off like 5 months just to like put the studio in. We just moved to a new state and I was able to do it and still have money coming in passively because I had built up so much of like, this residual income. So it's possible, but it takes a certain person because it is a lot of work. Like, I'm not going to be shy about that or mince any words. It took a lot of work. I had to, intern, learning, going from Pro Tools to Logic, just so that I had more opportunities and I had to like really learn a new skill set. And I had, I don't know how many times like I've looked like a complete idiot because I don't remember the name of some music plugin because I don't speak that language. I'm like, it's purple and, but that's what's, it's difficult for girls, especially like we speak a different language, but if you can get into it and hold your own and make some music on your own, that song will pay you for the rest of your life. Like you just never know if it could end up in an Apple commercial or if it could end up in a Super Bowl commercial until you make it and put it out into the world, you know?
You know I'm worth it. I am extraordinary. I am a masterpiece. You know I do it for me.
I'd be curious to know, you mentioned how it's different being female in the creative world. I'd be curious to know, so many people talk these days about everyone gets treated equally now, right? And well, I frankly see that most often the people who say, what's the problem? Everyone gets treated equally. Frankly, the people who are most likely to say that are white men. So I'd be curious to know, what has it been like in your shoes as a female artist looking to maintain your own autonomy? How has that worked, and what kind of hurdles have you had to overcome?
Well, it's been interesting. Every sort of room I walk into, I know that there's going to be a proving myself moment where somebody's going to bring something up just to sort of test me. Like if I start talking about production, and this has happened, I mean, it happens with men because men know production, especially here in Nashville. Like the guys are the producers, and so they're the ones that'll ask me, it's almost like I hear it so much, the language that's used, like, what DAW are you using? Just to kind of see if I know what that means. And it's so silly, and it kind of makes me laugh. And I, just like I answer honestly, and I say, like, I am equal but different. I speak a different language. And I found this with like training or mentoring other women, that the way that we talk about plugins, the way we talk about technical things, we're very visual. I need to describe what an EQ does visually. I need to talk with like colors, and I can't just say, well, use this, 4500 blah, 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 and make sure that you carve it off. Like I need to actually explain what it does and why it does that. And then it clicks. Women use more colorful language. And so if somebody can't hang with that, if someone's not cool with me forgetting the names of every plugin ever made, and not having all the newest sound toys stuff, and using the same mic that you're using, actually. I've gone through so many mics, and I always come back to this mic. And gear shaming, and I know, and I'm just like, I use what works, and that's what matters to me. But it's been interesting. I would say it's a little weirder here in Nashville. I think there were more female producers maybe in Los Angeles. It's a little more of an anomaly out here, but I'm also not working with a ton of people out here. I'm doing a lot of stuff by myself. But I found that honestly, white men have been like my greatest allies. I mean, people like Benj and he trained me in Logic, and that was a tough move to go from Pro Tools to Logic. I had such a hard time, even just with the colors of it. And I don't know if that's just because I'm a female or what, but just like the color scheme of it, I was like, this doesn't make sense. But he sort of vouches for me and sets me up in a lot of ways where it's like, this is Katrina. She's an amazing vocal producer. She does a lot of my editing. Now I'm working with more guys, and I don't feel like I have to prove myself as much when there's sort of like an in where they're like, you trust me, this girl can get it done. And if I can't, I'll tell you, like, there's a lot I'm still learning. I hate recording drums. I never want to do it. I will always hire something like that out.
Sure.
Because I don't enjoy it. But like that's been really huge to me, is just having someone just open up the conversation. Because I think a lot of rooms I've walked into, especially if I go into studios and stuff, they have a tendency to be like, oh, are you a singer? Are you? And I am. I'm definitely a singer. But the assumption is that I'm there to do background vocals, or I'm somebody's girlfriend, or, I've gotten that quite a bit. And so I don't really push and go, I'm actually a producer and blah, blah, blah. Like I'd rather be quietly successful and have people sort of come to me than to really be like, I don't know, having to like push and prove myself too much, you know?
Well, it's kind of like the people who feel the need to constantly say, "Hey, look at me. I'm so amazing. Look, hey, here's my credit list. Here's all the things."
Yep.
I mean, those are the folks who are so often haven't really built a foundation so that they can puff out their chest, as opposed to someone who just walks in the room and says, and just is, and they step up and people see it.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
One of the issues that faces creators a lot, and I know this has crossover to the world of music as well. People say, "I just want to create the stuff that I want to create," as opposed to creating for a specific purpose and creating for an audience. Specifically on YouTube, everyone says, "Well, I want YouTube to take my stuff and I want the YouTube algorithm to pick up my stuff and put it in front of millions of people." And the YouTube algorithm says, "I would love to help you do that, but you have to do this for a certain audience and you have to be able to connect with that. And you have to show us that they actually watch your stuff." I'd be curious to know, how do you approach the idea of creating for yourself versus creating for an audience or for creating for a specific purpose?
I think that it's important to know how to do both and consistently do both. Because creating for a specific audience, like with Dollywood, that was country bluegrass instrumentals. I didn't even get to sing, and singing is my favorite thing. And so at first I looked at it like, well, this is just a paycheck. And then I realized, like, this is making me better. It's making me flexible. It's making me more like varied and well-rounded. And so I think it's important to know how to make something for somebody else, because there will always be people that are kind of coming in saying, "Can you make this video for me? Can you do this for me? Really want it to look like this." And even if it goes against your aesthetic, you need to know how to do it, because one day you might want to do something that's more in that vein. But then it's important for your own heart and like your sense of creativity to continue to do the passion projects, the stuff you really, really love. And so I've got kind of a balance that I do where I make music specifically for sync, things that I think are going to sync up really well with people's videos, with their commercials or trailers or whatever it might be. And then I also release stuff that has nothing to do with sync because it makes me happy. It's just like, well, I just really wanted to get this song out here. And you know what? It takes a long time to get to the chorus. I would be murdered in the sync world for something like that, but I want to do it because I'm creative. So I kind of have a balance. Maybe you could call it like a pendulum swing where it's like sync music, Katrina music, and I swing back and forth. And then as I look back kind of on all of my work, I'm like, I'm really proud of this. I've been able to do this stuff, which is fun and collaborative, and I get to make a living off of it. And then I get to do this stuff that, occasionally these songs that I made for like my own passion projects, they end up blowing up for fun. Like they end up in sync videos, and like, it's always surprising to me, what songs from my Katrina side that are like my passion project end up like getting some traction in the sync world. And that's the kind of stuff that I love, is just like, what's going to end up being successful this year? I have no idea. So it's important to be able to do both. Got to make a living. You got to get picked up by that YouTube algorithm. Like you have to know how to do that. Yeah. But then you also need to do and explore more the stuff that you care about, or else I feel like you're just going to go crazy and get like money hungry and obsessed with just like the view counts. And like, there are people like that out there, even with music, where it's like, how many streams, how many likes do I have on social media? And it's like, are you doing what you love? Are you happy? Are you even happy? Like, are you passionate still? So you got to find that balance. And I've gotten it kind of locked down even numerically, because I'm much more of an analytical thinker, where it's like for every 2 sync albums, I want to do 1 Katrina passion project that's just like weird music, whatever I want to make. So it's more numeric for me, and that's a good flow for me. Like if I do 2 sync projects, I got to release some stuff that I'm really proud of, that I'm like, this speaks to my heart.
Any specific examples come to mind? Things that you wrote for your own purposes that ended up blowing up? Anything specific come to mind for you?
So I wrote this song a while back and produced it. It was one of the first ones I ever really produced myself, and it's called Soul on Fire. I listen to it now and I cringe because I'm like, I could mix this better. And maybe one day I'll go back in and mix it better. But I wrote it, and it's a cute, catchy pop song, but it's just like a hopeful song for people to sort of like look forward and look up and not just constantly dwell on yesterday, like thinking about what we've been talking about, like what sets your soul on fire? How do you get there? Like, because it's possible. You have all these choices that you make every single day, and like, that's something I'm really passionate about. Maybe it's because I'm a mom and I'm like teaching these things constantly. Like, what are you passionate about? Like, well, you got to work for it, but like, don't look at yesterday and all your failures. Look at tomorrow. Like, what sets your soul on fire? And anyway, it's like on Spotify, I think it's like my third most played song or second most played song. And it's a great song and I love it. I just, it was like one of my early ones when I just got into production, and people just eat that up. And it's been like YouTube TV family theme songs for like their little YouTube channels. And so I'll notice a lot of people that will like tag me in the different channels that it's been used on YouTube. And it was, it's Artlist 100%. It's all coming from Artlist. And like when I send stuff off for sync, when people are looking for uplifting songs, it's been held on to, like, it hasn't made it, I don't think, onto any TV shows or anything yet, but it makes it close to the final cut each time. And I'm like, how? I need to remix that thing. I'm like, I just sit there all tensed up because I'm like, oh, I need to remix this because it's, 7 years old or something. But, and then there'll be some songs I make specifically for sync that people are like, I don't really want to use that.
Swear this is just gonna nail it. It's just exactly what people want.
Oh yeah, the formula. I'm like, I got that formula. Nope, they don't want it. So it's
wow.
It's a lot of fun. Like it's kind of a lottery. I'm like, are you going to win the lottery this year? But when you're producing as much music as I am, like you're going to hit a few winning tickets once in a while, just for being more prolific than a lot of the other composers out there. Like you just are,
Awesome. So yeah. What are you working on? What are you working on these days? What are you excited about?
Well, I'm finishing up a couple of projects that Artlist has actually commissioned me to do. Me and Benj and another producer named John Coggins, a really, really awesome guy. I think you've used some of our stuff. He's got a lot of stuff on the Extreme catalog. Really incredible musician, producer, singer. So we're cutting a couple EPs for them, and then I'm going to this year do a passion project of mine. And it's going to be a little more retro, kind of more like 40s style vocals. Very like, nice. I don't know, older melodies, because I love writing that stuff. Very melodic, almost like Cinderella type stuff. I love doing that kind of stuff. So that's more, but originals. That's what I'm going to release as my own passion project this year. And yeah, I'm going to take a bunch of trips this year. I'm excited about that,
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So when people want to get more of your music in their pieces, where do they go to find you? We've talked about Artlist. Is that your main outlet for where people can find you these days?
That is my main outlet. Right now, I feel like it's the easiest. And especially if people are just starting out and they want to use it, like it's definitely the most affordable. Artlist.io is the address. Mm-hmm. I can't remember right now what the subscription rate is. They don't do one-off licenses. If you need a one-off license, you can contact me directly, Katrina Stone Music at Gmail, or you can DM me on Instagram. I got my Facebook taken away, so I've been fighting it for a while now, but like 15, 16,000 followers. And it just disappeared overnight. So
What?
crazy, right?
That is nuts.
Yeah. It happened about a year ago. It can
nuts.
happen. Let it be a warning. Get your email list. Like, use your email list. Social media can be gone.
Get your list, have your multiple platforms, but build your list that you own. Going back to the theme of taking control of your own creativity, taking control of your own output, do whatever you can to put yourself in a position where you can own your own masters, you can own your own publishing, you can you can be the label. That's man, oh man, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
man, I love being able to. I love being able to talk with people who are on that path, who are who are seeing all the change happening around the world, and you're like, okay, here we go. This is what we're doing. We don't have to stick with these old models and just whine and complain about how the old models don't work. Well, the old models, if you're a musician, I mean, if you're going to sit there and complain about how CD sales aren't what they used to be, well, they're not. You know?
It wasn't meant to last, Yeah. You got to adapt.
Fair enough. For sure.
Yeah.
Hey, so good hanging out with you, Katrina. And we'll make sure that your links are all dropped down in the show notes. And looking forward to hearing more of your tunes very soon. That's our conversation today with Katrina Stone. If you've been enjoying the music that you've been hearing throughout the episode, you can find links to each cue down in the show notes, along with Katrina's artist page at artlist.io. And if you enjoy interviews like this, could you do me a favor? Head over to your podcast platform, leave a review, and type out a sentence or two saying what you appreciate about the podcast. And if you're a creator who wants to go to the next level with your content, then you should definitely join us in the Green Room. It's all about helping you tell your stories, connect with your audience, and get things done in a community of smart creators like you. You can get access for a full month for free, and you can get started right now at storygreenlight.com/greenroomfree. That's storygreenlight.com/greenroomfree.